The Civil War was a defining moment in American history, pitting the Union, the Northern states, against the Confederacy, the Southern states, in a brutal conflict that lasted from 1861 to 1865. At its core, the war was a clash over the fundamental issue of slavery and states' rights versus federal power. In the decades leading up to the war, the United States was increasingly divided. The North, which had industrialized and urbanized, relied less on slavery, while the South's economy was heavily dependent on it. The issue of slavery had been a contentious one since the nation's founding. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 and the Compromise of 1850 had attempted to balance the power between slave and free states, but the tensions continued to escalate. The election of Abraham Lincoln as the 16th President of the United States in 1860 was the final straw for many in the South. Lincoln, a member of the newly formed Republican Party, which opposed the expansion of slavery, was seen as a threat to Southern way of life. Before his inauguration, 7 Southern states seceded from the Union, forming the Confederate States of America. South Carolina was the first to secede on December 20, 1860. The Confederacy adopted its own constitution, elected Jefferson Davis as its president, and began to seize federal property within its territory. Lincoln, determined to preserve the Union, called for troops to suppress the rebellion. This led 4 more Southern states to secede, bringing the total to 11. The war began in earnest on April 12, 1861, when Confederate forces fired on Union troops at Fort Sumter in South Carolina. Over the next 4 years, battles would rage across the nation, from Virginia to Texas, and from Tennessee to Florida. Major battles like Gettysburg, Antietam, and Shiloh would leave deep scars on the nation, with casualties numbering in the hundreds of thousands. The Union's strategy, known as the Anaconda Plan, focused on blockading southern ports and controlling the Mississippi River, which would split the Confederacy in two. The North's superior industrial capacity, larger population, and better infrastructure gave it a significant advantage, but the South had skilled military leaders like Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. One of the most significant turning points in the war was the Emancipation Proclamation, issued by Lincoln on January 1, 1863. This executive order declared that all slaves in Confederate-held territory were free, shifting the war's purpose from preserving the Union to also fighting for the abolition of slavery. African Americans began to join the Union Army in large numbers, contributing significantly to the war effort. As the war dragged on, the Union's superior resources began to pay off. In 1864, Union forces under General Ulysses S. Grant launched a series of campaigns that would wear down the Confederate Army. The fall of Atlanta in September 1864 and the capture of Richmond, the Confederate capital, in April 1865 signaled the imminent collapse of the Confederacy. On April 9, 1865, General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia, effectively ending the Civil War. The consequences of the war were profound. Over 620,000 soldiers died, and much of the South was left in ruins. The war led to the abolition of slavery, as the 13th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified in December 1865. The Reconstruction era that followed sought to rebuild the South and integrate freed slaves into society, but it was fraught with challenges and ultimately failed to achieve lasting equality. The Civil War remains a pivotal moment in American history, a testament to the struggle for freedom and unity that continues to shape the nation.